Ancient maps, drawn hundreds of years before Antarctica was officially discovered, show the continent's coastline free of ice. Massive, geometrically precise structures lie hidden beneath the waves in places like Japan and the Bahamas, too regular to be easily dismissed as natural formations. And from the deserts of Mesopotamia to the jungles of the Amazon, almost every ancient culture on Earth tells a similar story. A great world-drowning flood and a lost golden age of wonders that came before. What if these aren't just myths? What if they are echoes of a forgotten chapter in human history, a time of incredible civilizations that vanished beneath the waves or were wiped out by a global cataclysm? Get ready to have your mind stretched as we dive into some seriously intriguing theories about these pre-flood civilizations. Number 5. The Sunken City of Wonders, Atlantis and its oceanic cousins. You've probably heard of Atlantis. The name itself conjures images of a magnificent utopian city, brimming with advanced technology and wisdom that tragically sank beneath the ocean. But this isn't just a modern fantasy. The story comes from one of history's most respected thinkers, the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. Around 360 BC, Plato wrote about Atlantis in his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. He didn't present it as a vague myth, but as a real historical account, passed down through generations from Solon, a wise Athenian statesman who supposedly heard it from Egyptian priests. According to Plato, Atlantis was an immense island continent, larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which most scholars believe refers to the Strait of Gibraltar. This would place Atlantis somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Its people were said to be descendants of Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea. Their capital city was a marvel of engineering built in concentric rings of land and water, connected by canals large enough for ships to sail through. At its heart was a magnificent temple dedicated to Poseidon, covered in silver and gold, with a towering statue of the god driving a chariot pulled by winged horses. The Atlanteans were described as a noble and powerful civilization possessing advanced knowledge, incredible wealth from their fertile lands and rich mines, and a formidable military. They even had a mysterious metal called orichalcum, which was said to flash with a fiery light and was second only to gold in value. For a long time, Atlantis lived in peace and prosperity. But, as Plato tells it, their divine nature became diluted with human ambition and greed. They grew corrupt and warlike, attempting to conquer lands around the Mediterranean. This hubris, this overweening pride, supposedly angered the gods. And so, in a single dreadful day and night, violent earthquakes and catastrophic floods struck Atlantis, causing the entire island to sink into the sea, vanishing without a trace around 9,000 years before Plato's time. That's roughly 11,600 years ago from our perspective. So, where did Atlantis go? Or did it ever exist? The debate has raged for centuries. Some believe Plato's story was a philosophical allegory, a cautionary tale about the dangers of societal corruption and imperial ambition. Others are convinced it's a fragmented memory of a real place. Potential locations have been proposed all over the globe. One popular candidate is the Greek island of Santorini, formerly Thera, which was devastated by a colossal volcanic eruption around 1600 BC, wiping out the Minoan civilization there. While the timing is off by thousands of years from Plato's account, the cataclysmic nature of its destruction resonates with the Atlantis story. Then there's the Richat structure in Mauritania, Africa. This massive, circular geological formation, also known as the Eye of the Sahara, bears a striking resemblance to Plato's description of the Atlantean capital with its concentric rings. Viewed from space, it certainly looks intriguing, though most geologists explain it as a natural geological dome. that has eroded. Still, its appearance keeps the Atlantis connection alive for some researchers. Further afield, some theorists look towards the Caribbean. Off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas lies an underwater rock formation known as the Bimini Road. It consists of large rectangular limestone blocks arranged in a linear fashion, looking remarkably like an ancient pavement or breakwater. Discovered in 1968, it quickly became linked to Atlantis, partly fueled by prophecies from the American psychic Edgar Cayce, who had predicted that remnants of Atlantis would be found near Bimini around that time. Geologists mostly argue that the Bimini Road is a natural formation of beach rock, fractured in a regular pattern. Yet the debate continues, with some investigators claiming to have found other layers of stones beneath the main ones, suggesting a more complex structure. And Atlantis isn't the only lost continent whispered about in ancient lore and modern theories. There's the legend of Mu, a supposed vast continent in the Pacific Ocean, home to an advanced civilization that also met a cataclysmic end. This idea was popularized by writers like Augustus Le Plongeon and James Churchward in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, who claimed to have deciphered ancient texts pointing to Mu's existence. Similarly, the concept of Lemuria arose, initially as a scientific hypothesis in the 19th century to explain the distribution of lemurs in Africa, Madagascar, and India. It was imagined as a land bridge or continent in the Indian Ocean, later adopted by esoteric writers as another lost cradle of humanity. While mainstream science generally dismisses these lost continents as fanciful, the persistence of such stories across cultures is itself fascinating. Could these tales, especially Plato's detailed account of Atlantis, be echoes of a real, highly advanced pre-flood civilization that possessed sophisticated engineering, maritime capabilities, and a culture that was ultimately wiped out by the very sea it mastered? The story of Atlantis, with its specific mention of destruction by flood and earthquake, fits perfectly into the narrative of a world drastically changed by a global catastrophe, leaving behind only tantalizing clues and enduring legends. Number 4. Before the deluge, did we have spaceships and super tech? Imagine finding a smartphone buried in a medieval castle. That's the kind of jolt researchers get when they encounter certain artifacts from the ancient world, objects so technologically sophisticated or out of context, they just don't seem to fit the accepted timeline of human development. These are often called out-of-place artifacts, or UPARTs, and some theorists believe they are remnants of a forgotten, incredibly advanced civilization that existed long before any recorded flood or cataclysm. Take, for example, the site of Puma Punku in Bolivia. Located near the more famous Tiwanaku, Puma Punku is a field of giant scattered stone blocks. What's astonishing about these blocks, made from diorite and andesite, some of the hardest stones on Earth, is their precision. They feature incredibly smooth faces, perfectly flat planes, right angles, and intricate interlocking shapes, some with rows of small, identical holes drilled into them. Cuts are so precise that modern engineers marvel at how they could have been achieved. With the rudimentary tools, Tiwanaku culture, which mainstream archaeology dates to around 500 to 1000 AD. Some blocks weigh over 100 tons. How were they quarried, transported miles from their source, and then shaped with such mathematical accuracy? Some researchers suggest Puma Punku is far older than its conventional dating. Perhaps a relic from a much earlier, technologically superior culture. The sheer skill involved makes you wonder if they had something more than just stone hammers and bronze chisels. Then there's the Saqqara bird, discovered in a tomb in Saqqara, Egypt, in 1898. Dated to around 200 BC, this small wooden object, about 6 inches long, looks remarkably like a modern airplane or glider. It has a bird-like body, wings with an aerodynamic profile, and a tail fin that resembles a rudder. While many Egyptologists consider it a stylized representation of a falcon or a weather vane, others have noted its flight-worthy characteristics. In the 1970s, Dr. Khalil Mesa, who studied the bopit, built a replica that reportedly flew successfully as a glider. Could this be a model of a real flying machine from a forgotten past? Staying in Egypt, we find the dendrolite reliefs in the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. These carvings depict elongated bulb-like objects, each containing a serpent-like filament extending from a lotus flower base, which some interpret as a sort of sock. Figures are shown holding or interacting with these bulbs, which are connected by what look like cables to a jed pillar, often associated with stability and power, sometimes theorized to be an insulator or power source. Mainstream Egyptologists identify these scenes as mythological, representing aspects of Egyptian creation myths, with the bulb being a lotus flower giving birth to a snake. However, proponents of ancient technology theories suggest these reliefs are a schematic diagram of an electrical lighting device, similar to a Crookes tube or a Gisler tube. Travel to modern-day Iraq, ancient Mesopotamia, and you might hear about the Baghdad Battery. In 1936, near Baghdad, small terracotta jars were discovered, each containing a copper cylinder. Inside the cylinder was an iron rod, and the whole assembly was sealed at the top with asphalt. These artifacts date back to the Parthian or Sasanian periods, roughly between 250 BC and 640 AD. What were they for? Wilhelm Koenig, the German archaeologist who first described them, suggested they might have been ancient galvanic cells or batteries. Experiments have shown that replicas filled with an acidic electrolyte, like vinegar or grape juice, can indeed produce a small electrical current, perhaps enough for electroplating gold onto silver objects, a craft known in the region at the time. While this interpretation is debated, the possibility of ancient electrical knowledge is intriguing. Perhaps the most famous oopart is the Antikythera mechanism. Discovered in a Roman-era shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901. This incredibly complex device, dated to the 2nd or 1st century BC, has been called an ancient analog computer. It consists of at least 30 intricate bronze gears housed in a wooden case. X-ray and CT scans have revealed its sophisticated internal workings, designed to predict astronomical positions, eclipses, and even the cycles of Olympic Games. The level of miniaturization and complexity in its gear trains was not seen again in Europe for over 1,000 years, until the development of astronomical clocks in the 14th century. How did the ancient Greeks develop such a device? Was it a standalone marvel, or a surviving example of a broader lost technological tradition? And we can't forget the Vimanas from ancient Hindu texts like the Ramayana and Mahabharata. These scriptures described flying machines of various shapes and capabilities, sometimes used for travel, sometimes for warfare, capable of moving through the air, into space, and even underwater. While often dismissed as poetic fancy or mythology, the detailed descriptions have led some to wonder if they were inspired by actual aerial vehicles from a bygone era. If such technologies, advanced stone cutting, possible flight, electricity, complex mechanical computation, even aerial vehicles existed in deep antiquity, it paints a picture of a civilization far more advanced than we usually imagine. Could a global cataclysm, like a massive flood, have wiped out this civilization, burying its achievements and leaving only these puzzling fragments behind for us to rediscover? The existence of these ooparts fuel the theory that, before the world was reset, humanity, or perhaps another contemporary intelligence, had reached technological heights that we are only now beginning to comprehend, or perhaps re-attain. The knowledge itself might have been lost in the watery abyss, or scattered among the few survivors who could only pass down fragmented memories. Number 3. Land of the Giants. When Titans roamed the earth. Stories of giants are everywhere. From the Nephilim and Goliath in the Bible to the Titans and Cyclops of Greek mythology, the Jotnar of Norse sagas, the Fomorians of Irish legend, and the Sitaka giants, spoken of by the Paiute Native Americans, cultures across the globe have traditions of a race of enormous human-like beings who walked the earth in ancient times. Are these just tall tales, expressions of awe for the forces of nature? Or could they be distorted memories of actual giant beings who once existed? One of the most compelling, or at least curiosity-piquing lines of evidence for some researchers comes from the sheer scale of certain ancient megalithic structures. Consider Baalbek in Lebanon. The stone platform upon which its Roman temples were built contains some of the largest worked stones on the planet. The trilithon consists of 3 colossal limestone blocks, each estimated to weigh around 800 tons. Nearby in the quarry lies an even larger monolith, the Har al-Hibla, or Stone of the Pregnant Woman, tipping the scales at an estimated 1,000 to 1,200 tons. Another, even larger block was discovered nearby more recently, estimated at over 1,650 tons. How were these stones, weighing more than a dozen modern battle tanks, quarried and moved into place with such precision? While ingenious leverage and manpower are the conventional explanations, the sheer effort involved staggers the imagination and leads some to ask, were these structures built by or for beings of immense size and strength? Then there are sites like Gantia in Malta, a megalithic temple complex whose name means Giant's Tower in Maltese, reflecting local legends that it was built by giants. The temples date back to around 3,600 to 3,200 BC, making them older than Stonehenge and the Egyptian pyramids. The massive limestone blocks used in their construction, some weighing over 50 tons, certainly lend themselves to such myths. Similarly, in Peru, sites like Sacsayhuaman, with its enormous irregularly shaped stones, fitted together like a jigsaw puzzle with laser-like precision, defy easy explanation. The largest stones there are estimated to weigh between 120 and 200 tons. The question of giant humanoids is further fueled by numerous, often sensationalized reports from the 19th and early 20th centuries, detailing the discovery of giant skeletons. Old newspapers from America particularly are filled with accounts of enormous bones and skulls found in mounds and ancient burial sites, often described as being between 7 and 12 feet tall, sometimes even larger. These reports frequently mention features like double rows of teeth or unusually thick skulls. For example, there are tales of giant skeletons unearthed in the Ohio River Valley, in Wisconsin, and in other parts of the Midwest. Lovelock Cave in Nevada is another site associated with legends of red-haired giants, the Saite, who were supposedly wiped out by the local Paiute tribes. Excavations in the early 20th century did find mummified remains and artifacts, though mainstream accounts don't confirm giant stature. Problem with these historical accounts of giant skeletons is the almost universal lack of physical evidence today. Skeletons that were supposedly sent to institutions like the Smithsonian often disappeared or were misplaced, leading to theories of a cover-up designed to protect the established narrative of human evolution. While many of these old newspaper reports are likely exaggerations, hoaxes, or misinterpretations of normal-sized remains in unusual burial contexts, the sheer volume and consistency of some details keep the mystery alive for enthusiasts. Could a pre-flood world have supported such beings? Some theories propose that the Earth's environment before a major cataclysm was different. Perhaps atmospheric pressure was higher, or oxygen levels were greater. We know that in prehistoric times, some insects and animals grew to much larger sizes than their modern counterparts, like Meganura, a dragonfly with a 2.5-foot wingspan. If the environment could support giant dragonflies and enormous dinosaurs, could it also have supported giant hominids or humans? This is highly speculative, of course, but it's an idea explored by those who believe giants were a real part of a lost world. In many mythologies, these giants are often depicted as an ancient race existing before the current order of humans and frequently associated with chaos or divine power. The Greek Titans, for instance, were overthrown by the Olympian gods. The Nephilim of Genesis are linked to the wickedness that preceded Noah's flood. This narrative alignment is striking. If giants existed, their demise or disappearance is often linked to a great cataclysm or a divine intervention that reshaped the world, a world perhaps cleansed by a great flood. Could the bones occasionally reported, and the massive stones seemingly beyond human capability to move, be faint traces of these colossal beings from a pre-Diluvian age, an age when, as some legends claim, there were giants in the earth in those days? Number 2. One world ocean, the globe trotting, civilization before Columbus. Think about the world before airplanes, before satellites, before even the great sailing ships of the Age of Discovery. It's easy to imagine ancient civilizations as isolated pockets, developing independently, unaware of distant cultures across vast oceans. But what if that picture is wrong? What if long before Columbus or Magellan there was a sophisticated global maritime culture, its ships charting the coastlines of all continents, creating a connected world that was later shattered and forgotten, perhaps by a devastating flood? One of the most intriguing pieces of evidence often cited for this theory is a collection of perplexing ancient maps. The most famous is the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer, Piri Reis. He stated that he compiled it from about 20 older source maps, including some supposedly captured from Christopher Columbus and others dating back to the time of Alexander the Great or even earlier. What's stunning about the Piri Reis map is that it accurately depicts parts of the coastlines of South America and Africa, and most controversially, a landmass at the bottom that some interpret as a remarkably accurate, ice-free coastline of Antarctica. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and its coastline beneath the ice cap was only mapped with modern seismic technology in the 20th century. How could a 16th century map show this, unless it was based on source charts from a time when Antarctica was not covered in ice, a period thousands of years ago? Other maps fuel similar questions. The Orontius Phineas map of 1531 also shows Antarctica, again with features like rivers and coastlines that are now buried under miles of ice. The Mercator maps from the 16th century and maps by Philippe Wache from the 18th century, supposedly based on even older sources, also depict Antarctica sometimes as two separate islands, which modern research suggests might have been the case before the current ice sheet fully formed. The mystery is, where did these Renaissance cartographers get their information about a continent that was supposedly unknown and in some depictions ice-free? Could these be copies of maps made by an advanced seafaring civilization from a much earlier epoch? Beyond maps, there's the puzzle of transoceanic diffusion, evidence of plants, substances, and cultural traits appearing in widely separated parts of the world long before accepted dates of contact. For example, in the 1990s, German scientists found traces of cocaine and nicotine in ancient Egyptian mummies. Cocaine comes from the coca plant, native only to South America, and nicotine primarily from tobacco, also native to the Americas. How did these substances reach Egypt thousands of years ago? While contamination of the samples is one explanation, the findings have been retected by other researchers, leading to speculation about ancient trade routes between Egypt and the New World. Then there's the sweet potato, native to South America, which was found to be widespread in Polynesia centuries before European explorers arrived. How did it get there? Did it float across the Pacific, or was it carried by ancient mariners? Similarly, the presence of pre-Columbian chickens in South America, whose DNA links them to Polynesian fowl, suggests ancient trans-Pacific voyages. Architectural and cultural parallels across continents also raise eyebrows. Pyramids, for instance, are not unique to Egypt. They appear in Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztecs, Mesopotamia, ziggurats, China, Indonesia, Gunung Padang, and even parts of Europe. While independent invention is a common explanation, some researchers point to similarities in design principles, like alignment with cardinal directions or celestial events, and construction techniques as evidence of a shared ancient knowledge base. Flood myths are another near-universal cultural element, as are dragon or serpent motifs and forms of sun worship, found in remarkably similar forms in cultures that were supposedly isolated. Could ancient peoples have possessed the maritime technology for such long-distance voyages? We know Thor Heyerdahl famously sailed reed boats like the Ra II from Morocco to Barbados, and the Kon-Tiki from Peru to Polynesia, to demonstrate the feasibility of ancient transoceanic contact using seemingly primitive craft. But what if some ancient cultures had even more advanced vessels? Pictures on ancient seals, pottery, and rock carvings from various cultures sometimes show ships that look surprisingly sophisticated. If a global seafaring civilization did exist, trading and sharing knowledge across the oceans, a cataclysm, like a worldwide flood, would have been devastating. Port cities would be submerged, trade routes cut, and the specialized knowledge of shipbuilding and navigation potentially lost among isolated pockets of survivors. The world would become fragmented, and the memory of that connected age would fade into myth and legend, leaving behind only tantalizing clues like out-of-place maps, anomalous artifacts, and shared cultural symbols. The idea of a pre-flood, one-world ocean culture suggests that our ancestors were far more capable and interconnected than we often give them credit for. Their world a vibrant network that was tragically undone. Number 1. The Great Reset, Cataclysm, Buried Cities, and the Seeds of a New World. What if the pre-flood era wasn't just ended by water, but by a combination of cataclysmic events that literally reset civilization on Earth? Imagine a thriving, perhaps globally connected world, suddenly and violently brought to its knees by cosmic impacts, massive geological upheavals, and subsequent worldwide floods. This isn't just the stuff of disaster movies. Some scientists and researchers propose that such an event or series of events did occur in our distant past, around 12,800 years ago, at the beginning of a period called the Younger Dryas. The Younger Dryas was a geologically abrupt period of intense cold, a mini ice age that lasted for about 1,200 years and interrupted the warming trend at the end of the last major ice age. What caused it? One compelling theory is the Younger Dryas Intact hypothesis. This suggests that one or more large cometary fragments struck or exploded over North America and possibly other parts of the world. Evidence cited includes a black mat layer found at numerous archaeological sites across North America containing nanodiamonds, metallic microspherules, and other materials indicative of an extraterrestrial impact and widespread wildfires. Such an event would have triggered catastrophic climate change, massive meltwater floods from despalized ice sheets, perhaps the source of many flood myths, and mass extinctions of megafauna, like mammoths and saber-toothed cats. It could have also decimated any human civilizations existing at the time. Enter Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey. This incredible archaeological site, dated to around 9,600 BC, predates pottery, metallurgy, writing, and even what we traditionally understand as the beginnings of agriculture and settled village life. Consists of multiple circular and oval structures featuring massive T-shaped limestone pillars, many weighing 10 to 20 tons, intricately carved with reliefs of animals like foxes, lions, snakes, vultures, and scorpions. The level of organization and skill required to build Göbekli Tepe is astounding for its supposed hunter-gatherer creators. What's even more mysterious is that around 8000 BC, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately and carefully buried under tons of earth, preserving it for millennia until its rediscovery. Why would its builders, or their descendants, entomb such a monumental creation? Some theorists propose Göbekli Tepe was built by survivors of the Younger Dryas cataclysm, perhaps as a sanctuary, an astronomical observatory, or a message in a bottle, an attempt to preserve sacred knowledge or commemorate the lost world and mark a new beginning. Its burial could have been a final act of sealing away something powerful or sacred. Then there's the Great Sphinx of Giza in Egypt, conventionally dated to around 2500 BC, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafra. Its age has been challenged by geologist Dr. Robert Schoch. He points to the heavy erosion patterns on the body of the Sphinx and the walls of its enclosure, which he argues are characteristic of prolonged and heavy rainfall, not wind and sand erosion typical of the desert climate of the last few thousand years. Egypt experienced such a wet, rainy period much earlier, before 3000 BC, and particularly before the end of the last ice age. If Schoch is correct, the Sphinx could be thousands of years older than dynastic Egypt, possibly dating back to 10,000 BC or even earlier. Could it be a relic from a pre-flood, pure Younger Dryas civilization, later recarved or adopted by the dynastic Egyptians? The implications are staggering. The near-universal presence of flood myths across cultures worldwide adds another layer to this great reset theory. From Noah's Ark in the Abrahamic traditions, to Manu in Hindu lore, to Kalian in Greek mythology, Utnapishtim in the Epotamian, and countless stories from indigenous cultures in the Americas, Asia, and Australia, the core elements are often strikingly divine displeasure or a natural catastrophe, a warning given to a chosen few, the building of a boat or vessel, the saving of humans and animals. Could these be collective memories of a real global or near-global flooding event? Perhaps the meltwater pulses and sea level rise associated with the end of the Younger Dryas and the final throes of the Ice Age? If a sophisticated global civilization was indeed decimated by such cataclysms, it's plausible that small groups of survivors, possessing fragments of the old knowledge, emerged into a shattered world. These survivors might have been seen as culture bearers or gods. Think of the Akalu sages in Sumerian mythology, fish-like beings who were said to have brought the arts of civilization to humanity after the Great Flood. Or Viracocha in Andean tradition, a civilizing hero who appeared after a period of darkness and flood. The sudden appearance of agriculture, complex societies, astronomy, and monumental architecture in places like Sumer, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, seemingly without long local development, could then be interpreted not as spontaneous invention, but as a re-emergence of knowledge carefully preserved and passed down by the inheritors of a lost world. This great reset theory suggests that our current cycle of civilization might not be the first, but one of many, built upon the submerged ruins and fragmented memories of an incredibly ancient and advanced epoch that was almost entirely erased from the face of the earth. The clues, scattered and enigmatic, continue to challenge our understanding of just how old and how astonishing human history might truly be.